You are listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 303.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. How's everybody doing today? June is over. I can't believe it. And we are headed into July. Very excited, as always, to be here. Last week, we finished up our final class for Cookbooks on KDP. We had been meeting about every week since March the 18th, and the students in Cookbooks on KDP designed and published 2 books on Amazon. Absolutely amazing. I loved all the students I worked with, and I'm so proud of them and hope to have some information about the books that they put out here on the podcast in the future. But just so that you know, if you are interested in publishing your recipes in a book on Amazon, you can go to the show notes and register to get on the wait list for the next time I open the doors to Cookbooks on KDP. And the link is www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/KDP. Join the wait list and you will be sure to be one of the first people that hears about the program when I reopen the doors. Today on the podcast, I have an interview with Julie Evink. Julie is the creator of the popular food blog, Julie's Eats and Treats, which reaches millions of people every month. She is known for her no-fuss recipes that use pantry staples yet are bursting with flavor. Julie and I talk about her new cookbook by the same name, Julie's Eats and Treats, her journey from blogging to writing a cookbook, the building of her brand and her blogging business, and how she published a cookbook that contained not only recipes from her blog, but many exclusive recipes unique to the cookbook as well. So without further delay, let's dive into this interview with Julie Evink. Hi, Julie. Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, so excited that you're here. As always, favorite thing to do, talk to fellow cookbook authors. But before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I call myself the mom next door from Midwestern Minnesota. I'm married and I have 3 children, and I run the food blog, Julie's Eats and Treats.
Great. How long have you been blogging?
Since 2010, so I'm the grandma of food blogging.
You are a grandma. You know, I don't think that people that see food blogs now really realize like what happened in the early 2000s when it came to blogging.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing, and like we got to create essentially the industry. So I always look at these young influencers and I'm like, yep, that's all because these old women fought for getting paid for what you're doing now.
Right. You paved the way. That someone always has to start something new. So tell us about your blog and about, the whole blogging journey, getting started with that.
Yeah, I started, like I said, in 2010, and it was just a way to I created a website and I was sharing like family favorite recipes, and there was no opportunity to make money or anything. It was just a hobby, and it turned into this massive full-time job. Now me and my husband work together on it, and I saw like people start to make money on it, and I saw the opportunity, and I had went to school for hotel restaurant management, and I had moved back to my hometown in Minnesota. It was 5,000 people. I was working at a car dealership doing finance, so that wasn't really my passion. And I saw this opportunity to like connect with people through food, which I love to do, and that's how I show my love. So if I feed you, I love you. And it was just this cool opportunity. I was kind of in the right spot at the right time, and things just kind of snowballed from there.
Wow. So you even have your husband working with you.
I do. He quit his job about 2 years ago and came on board full time with me.
Wow. Tell us about his role in the blog.
So my husband did carpentry first, and so he quit his job and built us a house, and then he transitioned into helping me. And everyone's very surprised to learn this, but he actually does all of the recipe testing now. We have a sister site. It's called Gimme Some Grilling. It's all grilling, smoking, and Blackstone. So he tests for all of those recipes, plus all the Julie's Eats and Treats recipe. I am more in the management role now where I do a lot of like the research and managing of different employees, and figuring out what recipes I want, but then I hand them over to him and he comes up with a recipe and tests it all.
So he actually takes it from idea to a finished tested recipe.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. So he
And
does.
are you able to feed the food that you cook to your family then for dinner?
Yes, they are my recipe testers, and
Yes.
it's so funny. They're trained. They're like, "Is this a test recipe, Mom?" And I'm like, "Yep." And they give me their honest opinions.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
you worry.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think it's always amazing when we can feed the people that live with us the food that we're working on for the projects that we're working on.
Yeah, a lot of people like batch cook like 6, 7 recipes in a day, and we do not format it like that. We are the ones that like will cook the
Yes.
meal at night and test the recipe, feed our family. There's not a lot of waste in what we do.
Yeah, that's nice. Actually, and it feels better, I think, to have it done that way. Not only it feeds you, but I think the waste thing is a real issue for some people. And I ran into that more sometimes though, if people are they live alone or they're single and they're working on something like this, they really do face times where if they're cooking on working on a batch of a recipe for 4 to 6 people, maybe 6 to 8 people, they do wonder what they can do with the leftover food and they don't want to waste it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I have to feed my family anyways. I might as instead of testing all the recipes plus making something for dinner, let's just do it all at the same time and incorporate life into work.
Yes, yes. You're actually living the work and the recipes that you're actually putting out there.
Yeah.
And your sister site, Give Me Some Grilling, is that what you said?
Yes.
That's neat. And the Blackstone, I've seemed like I'm hearing more and more about. I know this doesn't have to do with your current cookbook, but I'm hearing more and more about the Blackstone, the flat top grilling.
It's outdoor griddle and it's the hot trend right now. And we started that when more of like the smokers started to trend. So people were smoking recipes in their backyard. And I noticed that it was all intense recipes. Like it was overwhelming. And I saw this opportunity to take the Julie's Eats and Treats theme of just easy, family friendly recipes that are quick and easy over to the grilling, smoking space.
Yeah.
And that's what we really focused on is just like things your kids would eat, things you can like grill or smoke. They're quick, they're easy, they're family friendly. And so that's really what we did. We got into that space with those recipes.
Wow. Is that a whole different audience of people?
It is. There's a lot more male readership on that blog than there is on Julie's Eats and Treats by far.
Yeah.
It is. It's definitely a different audience.
Yeah. And is that something that your husband can help with when it comes to any of the content, or you still kind of manage all that also?
I manage it. He does the recipe developing on that too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. But I think outdoor toys like smokers and grills and the Blackstones, and we just bought our son a little wood-fired pizza oven thing because he's like he does anyway. Like to buy him gifts like that's fun to like share that kind of stuff with them, and they love all that kind of stuff.
They do.
And it's like that's great. So I love that. I'm gonna have to check that out. But the book that you actually wrote, Julie's Eats and Treats Cookbook, is an offshoot of your blog. So a lot of people are curious if you have a blog and you want to write a book, like what was the sequence of events? What made you decide to take the content or some of it or new content and actually create a book, a physical product now instead of just a blog?
People had been asking me for a cookbook and it was just never the right time. And about a year and a half ago in January, we sat down and did our goals for the year, where we wanted to go. And my husband, I told him, I'm like, I really want to write a cookbook, and more of the self-published cookbooks from bloggers were coming out. And I had a few friends do them. And so he's like, well, have you looked into it? I'm like, yeah, but I don't know if I'll make any money or even pay for it. And he's like, let's just do it and see what happens. It's something you've dreamed about and we have the time right now. So I got to start there. I had always wanted to do a cookbook, but back like 5-10 years ago, it was like publishing companies coming to you and being like, I'll offer you X amount of dollars, and this is the 100 recipe topic I want you to publish on.
Yeah.
You have to be all new content, and it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so when I saw this self-published cookbook trend, I was like, then I have full control over it. I can put what I want in there. I can do it all myself. I know what it's going to be named and what it's going to look like and all that. So that's really what made me decide to do it now.
Yeah. And what about the layout of the book? How did you work with them to get the design of the book laid out?
So yeah, I hired Weller Smith Designs and I worked with Leanne, and
Yep.
she was wonderful. And we just really went through, and she came up with like several mock designs. One of them had a mock design of food on the cover. One of them had a mock design of me on the cover. And she's like, what do you want? What do you want the tagline to say and stuff? And it was really interesting because I've never done it. So
Yeah.
my dad, who's a 70-year-old farmer, actually has never marketed anything but grain in his life. I was asking, like, kind of talking about where it was or whatever, and I was trying to decide that. And he's like, but Julie, it's you. Like, it's your name, you're the brand. It makes sense to show you on it. And so that's kind of how I went with the cover design of me in the kitchen.
Yeah, because it's even true for the blog. I mean, your name is attached to the blog also.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it revolves around you. And then when you worked with Leanne, she helped you with the design, and then you all took the recipes and she laid them all out. And then the publishing company actually took that interior and worked through like printing it or the things that needed to be done to get the book produced, right?
Right. So Leanne has all these contacts. So like this was for me, what always stopped me was like, I
What do
don't know
do?
how, like,
Right.
I don't know how to get it printed. I don't know where to get it printed. I don't know how to distribute or anything. And I knew when I paid her, like she was going to tell me all that stuff.
Right.
And it made it really like easy to bite off small chunks and get it done.
Yeah.
It wasn't as overwhelming. I didn't have to spend tons of time researching, not knowing what I was doing. So that was what made it approachable for me. And yeah, I would go in and like pull a bunch of cookbooks out and see what designs of like, or like editorial style I wanted, or how I wanted the recipes formatted, and how I liked what information I wanted on each recipe, things like that. And then she would come up with several mock designs, and then we'd go from there.
Yeah. And was Leanne's name and Weller Smith Design something that had become known to you through the blogging community?
Yeah, I had a couple other friends use her for cookbooks and recommended her.
Very good. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I think that for someone like you that has a blog and you want it to be like in sync with your book and blog in sync with each other, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. So what's the experience been like now? The book came out, let's say May 21st. So it's almost been a month. How's it been going?
It's been going really good. I joke because I live in a small town, and if you can imagine, like, this is a big deal.
Yes.
And I joke that I don't go anywhere without my Sharpie now because I'm signing cookbooks. But like I said, the community has been great. The online community has been great. And it's so fun to hear, like, I made this recipe, or I made your recipes before, but I find myself reaching for this cookbook all the time.
Yeah. I think the book just makes it easier for people to access it any time of the day when they want to make something.
Which surprised me because we live in this world of online content. And to me, I'm like, are cookbooks like still in? Do people still use them? I kind of thought it was like a lost art. And it's been so interesting to me that, the feedback.
Right. I think you're in the right place to talk about that because first of all, in our kitchens, there's nothing digital that we're working with. We're working with our hands and we're working with ingredients. And I'll say this until the day I die. Cookbooks fit in that environment. And people, I think, will develop a relationship with your book. They probably already have a relationship with you, and they trust you, and they know you, and they know the kind of work you do. But your book has allowed them to go deeper and to consistently you can be in their kitchen now, like all the time.
Yeah. Like I said, I am blown away by like the feedback I've got and like, yeah, that relationship, like they
Yes.
trust you even more now
100%.
because they have you in their kitchen.
Right.
And
It's like, this is your guilt. You did this for them.
I did. And that's essentially like, I did it for them. I
You
wanted
did do it for them. Yeah.
easy recipes. I call it an elevated church cookbook. If you're from the Midwest, you get it. You reach for your church cookbooks over and over again because it's a tried true recipes
Yes.
you can count on.
Yes.
And I just took that concept and then took it one step farther with pictures for everything and information and different things. And yeah, the feedback's has blown me away.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I think it's great. And I think that that's what I love about the physical books. And I also love the ways that different people in the food space get to the book thing. Because the book is kind of like the hub, obviously, of the people that I talk to. But it's just fascinating to me because you had a wildly successful blog. This was not something you had to do.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't anything that I had to do to make my blog successful. It was a like side effect from my blog.
Right. Right.
Just
And
like
it's going to add to it's going to bring new people to your blog also, I bet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about your what's in the book. And tell me, you mentioned elevated church cookbook, but maybe talk about some of the popular recipes that were on your blog that you put in the book. And then also I know that you developed exclusive content for the cookbook that is not actually in the blog, correct?
Correct.
Right.
So that was kind of a process. In my head, no one was going to buy this cookbook if I didn't have exclusive content. So I have about 20-ish recipes that are exclusive, will never be published on Julie's Eats and Treats. And then the rest are all just popular recipes from my blog.
Okay.
What I have learned is people do not care if they're published on the blog or not. So if there's anyone wondering that listening to this, I have found it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And and just to make a caveat with that, this is for you as a successful blogger, self-publishing your own book in a very professional way. It didn't matter. So the question is whether or not it really matters to traditional publishers or not. Like,
right.
Is that worry really founded still in 2024? It's an interesting question. I'll get back with everybody about that because there's that concern also for bloggers that maybe want a traditional publishing contract. Do I have to do everything new? If you look at Smitten Kitchen, okay, she's a blogger that does traditional publishing, but I bet there's things, there has to be bellwether favorite blog recipes that are in her books. There has to be. Yep. Deb Perlman.
Yeah.
So,
and why wouldn't you want those in there? Like,
no, right. Yeah. So tell me about let's talk about the ones, first of all, that are tried and true blog recipes that you knew you couldn't leave out of the book.
Yeah. So the first one I knew I was putting in there was the baked chicken legs. It is by far the #1 recipe on my blog, and it's always a hit. I always get rave reviews, and I knew that was going in there.
Okay.
And then I kind of went through and I laid out all the recipes after that, and I knew I wanted chicken, beef, pork, and seafood. And it was like, I would go through and I'd have like 30 recipes, and then I'd like hone it down by like a few casseroles, a few sheet pan, a few one pot. So there was different cooking methods, there were different ingredients, and it wasn't like all the same thing. And then we'd go from there. I put my mom's lasagna on there because that's the one I feed my family all the time. I serve it at birthday parties and everything like that. I did some creamy chicken enchiladas. As you can see, we went from baked chicken to lasagna to enchiladas. So there's like things from every category, but they're all still super family friendly and delicious and easy to make.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the kinds of things that your blogging audience loves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So what about some of the new content? What did they find in this book that they couldn't find on your blog?
So I put this cheesy garlic bread in there, and it was my mom's recipe growing up, but she just dumped in like butter and cheese and seasonings. She never measured it. So I got this like scrap of paper she had wrote down like what she used, but there was no measurement. So then I had to recreate it from like my memory of what it tasted like 20 years ago. And it is one of the ones that I see people sharing on social media over and over again. So that's been kind of fun because in my head, I'm like growing up on that. And
That
it's
is
like,
so funny. And then you just put it in the book and it takes off.
right. And it took off and it's so easy to make, but like it's so much better than any bought in garlic bread. And it
Yes.
takes like 10 minutes. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah, that's one I put in there. And then another one I put in there were these sheet pan chicken fajitas, and it's
Mhm.
easy, it's healthy, and it's ready super fast. Kids will eat it. It's not too spicy. It's all super Midwestern, kid friendly.
Yep. Very nice. So the sheet pan, chicken fajitas, and cheesy garlic bread. I love it. And I see a picture on the back here of Monster cookie bars. Now, I happen to have I love M&Ms and I love cookies, and those look good.
Yeah, and that's actually my friend's recipe she made all the time, and I got out of a church cookbook and altered it a little, and
Yeah,
yeah,
elevated it.
elevated church cookbook.
Yeah, and I see burrito bowl, fluffy pancakes, slow cooker French dip sandwiches, honey sesame chicken.
Mhm.
Yeah, all looks good. And the photography is beautiful. Tell me about the process of doing that.
So a lot of the recipes I had photography done. There was a few that were old and I had updated. I have photographers I work with, and so some of the recipes are for me. Some of them are from hired photographers. But yeah, we went through and we just made sure everything was updated and looked beautiful because if you're like me, you eat with your eyes.
Right. And I also think one thing about a book that's different from the blog, I'm sure has a look to it. But when you really bring these photos in together into a book that people can flip through page after page, it's important that they look similar.
It's
And they
important
have,
they look similar, but it's important that they're taken from different angles. So, like, as you flip through it, it's not all overhead. Like, we have
yeah,
some 45 and we have some bite shots and we have some overhead, and that they're all mixed up. So, it's not like 5 overhead and then like 5 45-degree angles. So, that was also interesting trying to get that all figured out. But
yeah. And a couple process shots, the breakfast crescent ring. Nice to have a process shot because that obviously involves a special way to lay the crescent roll dough out, fill it up, and then fold it over. So that's a really neat picture, also.
yeah, so there's just a couple ones with process shots, but if I felt like they had some tricky steps or extra steps that people would visually, it'd be helpful for them to visually see. We pop them in there. We have the cruffins have a
Yeah, I see that here.
process shot too. Those are kind of
Yeah,
particular too.
yeah, neat. So, and your photographer then also, I think the other thing that people need to pay attention to, obviously, when you do your own photos, you can make it representative of the recipe. Like there's not a cilantro garnish when there's no cilantro in your recipe, and I think when you have control over the photography and the people that are doing it, it truly does make your recipes and your photos a cohesive unit, and then putting them all together in the book um, just is icing on the cake, no pun intended. Really, really nice. And I love the full bleed. It's funny, I was been look at cookbooks and the bleed or no bleed. Bleed would be for those of you listening when the photos go all the way out to the edge of the page. And some cookbooks have a border around it, but I like the way that yours looks. It looks really nice.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So you know what impresses me about you, Julie? Your blog is a business.
It is.
And when did you make that transition in your blogging days? Did you start that way or did it happen like kind of organically?
Um, no, it did not start that way because blogs weren't business at that
Yeah.
point. It
Yeah.
was, I mean, you just did it. It was a passion. It was a hobby.
Yeah.
And so I would say like 2 years into it, I kind of started seeing some other people start making like $100, $200 from their blogs per month using ads from Google AdSense for anyone that's listening and knows that stuff.
Mhm.
And I was like, I still remember this. I was sitting in my mom's living room. My little brother was there, and I'm like, people are making money. If they can make it, I can too. And we like I have 2 brothers and we all own businesses at this point, or we have throughout our lives, and we grew up on a farm. It's a business. Like it's always just kind of been ingrained in us, and it was like a challenge to me. Well, if they can do it, I can do it. So I had that business passion and I knew I wasn't going to farm. So what was I going to do?
Right.
The other side of Midwest farming is feeding everyone, right?
Yes.
And so I started digging in and just kind of learning it. And there was a group of us bloggers. We took this online blog conference thing a few years into it. And we really just tied together and we started learning from each other and sharing information. And it started just gradually going and growing. Pinterest came out. I still remember waiting for the
Yeah.
invitation. I mean, when I
Yes.
started, it was only Facebook. And so it was fun. It was challenging. We just kind of learned as it went. There was no like, you couldn't look up how to start a blog 101. And I mean, we went through horrible web hosts and we DIY'd our websites. They were atrocious, but that's all there was.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was just slow and steady growth until the time, I think it was about 7 years ago, I was like, okay, this is taking off. I can't work full time and blog because we had been in this rut of like, I worked weekends or nights on the blog. I remember like breastfeeding my babies with my laptop on my like there was a lot of hard work. I was working 30 hours outside of my 40-hour job on this blog to get it launched. And it looks all like roses and fairy tales and unicorns now, but I did not make a cent for many, many years. And I put in a ton of work. And sometimes it's hard to remember that because now it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at my husband one day and I was like, I can't do it all. And he's like, I've been telling you to quit for 2 years and focus on it. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do it now. And I quit and I went full time and I've never looked back. And it was the biggest blessing ever.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And something that impresses me too about you that I'd like to ask about is when you started blogging and you're meeting other people who are also doing food blogging, it would be easy for you to think of them as your competitors.
Right.
But you obviously had a great spirit of cooperation with them for the benefit of the group. Talk to everybody a little bit about what that required of you and what that meant for continuing to build your blog and learn what you learned and have it where it is today.
I was so blessed by these, and it was all women. It was stay-at-home moms and stuff, and we were all just trying to figure it out. And sure, you'd get the odd one that would take all the information and never share anything. But overall, my experience has been that people have been very open and sharing information. And now I'm at the point where I've had these relationships with these women for 14 years. You know what I mean? Like we all started around the same time and we're still, because things move so fast in this industry and they're constantly changing and algorithms are changing. And without each other, there was no support. No one knew what we were doing. Everyone looked at us like we might have horns coming out of our head. Like no one got the concept and it was a super lonely place to be. And like I said, you couldn't Google anything. So we just all kind of banded together and shared information and it was a really cool experience. I just think that there's so much competition nowadays and really I am a proven fact of if you share with others that are competing against you, it's not necessarily gonna hurt you. Like it will come back, they'll share like I'd share something, they'd share something, and we just grow together.
Yeah.
There is enough space for all of us. And I've been very lucky to have these women in my life.
Yeah, I would say that that's true because you even think in the cookbook space. I mean, how many cookbooks have been written? How many cookbook authors? And they're not competitors. I mean, sure, but there's people that might buy your book instead of my book. But when you think about the whole room full of people that do this, people that buy cookbooks and like to buy cookbooks are going to buy more than one cookbook, I promise. And they love to buy them. They like to read them. They like to give them as gifts. They like to share them. And there's a lot of room, I think. So I think that it's really important for people to just have that attitude. And I found that to be generally true also for the cookbook authors that I talk to here on the podcast. Always willing to share, always willing to talk about things that work for them, things that didn't work, and just the great amount of benefit we can all gain from working in that way. So I really am happy to hear you talk about that. Are many of the bloggers that you started working with them 2010 when you first started, they're still doing it.
They're still doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had a few get burnt out and sell their blogs,
Yeah.
different things like that.
Yeah.
But overall, the core of us are still in there. And it's so funny now because, like, we'll go to conferences, and one of them just looked at me in the spring and she's like, why are there all these men in here now? They're not the husbands. They actually have blogs.
Yeah.
It was
There was
99%
never
of us
that
were
way.
women when we
Right.
started this all, and now like the guys have caught on to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's neat. Let's talk a little bit about balance. You have a family, you're working with your husband, you're running this as a business. Maybe that's where the balance comes from for you, because it sounds like you probably transitioned to hopefully better balance as a result of it being the business. But what are your thoughts about balance, and what tips do you have for people who are maybe getting started, or they're in the middle of their journey and they're trying to figure it all out?
I think a balance means something different to everyone. What I found was the most important is knowing when I needed help, and also knowing what I needed help with, whether it be the simple thing of hiring a housekeeper because I would rather pour energy into this than clean my house. And it was just like the little things like that. And I think so many people like get it caught up in like what other people expect of you. So like when I quit my full-time job, I don't know how many people looked at me and go, "Oh, that's wonderful. Now you can stay at home with your children." Um, and I kept them in daycare. They were little. If I had them at home, I felt like I was failing at everything. Like I was failing them because I was distracted by the blog. I was failing the blog because I was distracted by them. And I found that it made me a better mom to focus on the blog during the working hours and focus on them afterwards. And I just think everyone needs to do what's right for them and not get caught up in everyone's expecting what of you and where, and not feel guilty for what works for you, whether it's hiring a housekeeper or sending your kids to daycare or retiring your husband because you need someone to run the kids and you are working on this business that feeds your family. Like that's what it came down to for us was I was getting pulled away by running the kids all the time. And I'm like, okay, we're to the point where this is growing massively. And I
Yes.
think it's time for you to come do some of this stuff so I can focus on this and growing this and giving us the flexibility down the line to be able to do what we need to do when we want to do it. So
Right. Yeah.
it's not normal. It's not what you see every day that I am the breadwinner and he works. I mean, don't get me wrong, he is part of this business, but essentially he works for me
Yeah.
and he does a lot of the family stuff and it works for us. People kind of think we're crazy in Midwest Minnesota, and it's not the typical
Not
normal.
normal. Right.
No, right. But it works for us. And I think just like not letting other people dictate what is your balance, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet it's something though to watch your children watch you two do what you do. I think that what we do as parents speaks volumes more than even the words we say, just the way that we handle things and the way that we work together on, getting kids to different places. And I admire that you're willing to stand in what you know is true for your family and be good with that and be okay with that and know that it's working because you get to decide. You really do.
Yeah. And it is interesting, like watching our kids, and they're at the ages where they haven't really realized how lucky they are. Like
Yeah.
that mom and dad can leave in the middle of the day and go do whatever they need to. But I think as they get older and see what we've built and different things like that, that they will hopefully have that spirit too, whether it's working for someone and being
Yeah.
initiative and like ready to go, or if it's building their own thing. So it's going to be really neat to see them come
Yeah.
of age and do all that stuff.
Yeah. It is fun, in particular when they grow up around food and they grow up around eating things that you all are trying and preparing, and they have an open mind about that. The places that it takes them, and even the places that took our kids, it's just been fascinating to watch
Mhm.
how their food has been a common thread through all of it, but the different things that they're doing and the memories that they have, you'll never regret that. And I love hearing your story about that. And I think that brand building and audience building, though, has to always be something that's on your mind.
Yeah,
Growing your audience, so growing, and of course, the cookbook helped with that.
100%. Yep.
What are the other kind of things that might be coming for you, or are you thinking about in terms of exposing your work to new people?
So from the cookbook, I have been on TV now, and I have a few more upcoming events that I'll be appearing on TV, which was new for me. Unfortunately, I live 3 hours from a major city, so it requires some time and effort for five
Yeah,
minutes. But
yeah,
it's interesting to see that TV episode appear and then like Instagram numbers go up. So
yeah.
it obviously works. So I did some of that. I'm gonna do a book signing down in the cities, and I think it's Edina. So we'll be out at Barnes and Noble. So that will be interesting. I find Instagram doesn't drive a lot of traffic per se to the blog, but that's where I make my connections. That's where I see the behind the scenes, and that's where they see my kids and my family and the balance and
Right.
struggles and all of what we do and how it works. And people really enjoy that. And it's fun because you get to show them that. But I also find, like you said, there's enough competition, like there's enough
Right.
space in the market for everyone. Like some people don't connect with me, and that's fine.
Right.
And like they go to the next person. So I just think like all of that's just really interesting and fun.
Yeah, because your willingness to put yourself out there, people are either gonna say this is for me or it's not. And it's no reflection on you, obviously, or your business. It's just not a match. People listen to a
Exactly.
podcast about cookbooks. That's like, I don't think so. Next,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna listen to a podcast about cookbooks. I'm like, that's it doesn't really that's
That's
fine.
fine.
It is. It's just it's what
But
it's
you don't need to tell me why I'm not going to listen to the
exactly.
podcast
No,
about
it's like, and
cookbooks.
I think that's the neat thing about food too, is there's so many different ways that we can build on what we love in the food space and attract people from just that sheer enjoyment of the topic that we're working on and writing about and spending time with. Uh,
Mhm.
so I think that's neat, and I'm so glad that you decided to work on writing the book and that you're using it as a great tool for building your audience, maintaining your audience, helping your audience, and giving them the joy of having your recipes with them all the time, plus
Mhm.
some of the bonus recipes that we talked about. So, as we're starting to wrap up, I love to ask my guests if they have a favorite cookbook and what that might be.
I was gonna say my own, but I think I changed my mind.
Okay,
There
let's back up a minute. Tell people why you would say your own. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, I actually, now that I have my, this is so weird, but now that I have like all my recipes in print in a book, I find myself reaching for this and making these recipes over and over again more than anything else.
More than
And
you even did when they were available on your blog.
oh yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
My kids grab it and they go through it and they pick out what they want because it's tangible. You can feel it. And my friends will send me pictures all the time of their kids going through it and asking for recipes
So sweet.
for
Yeah,
dinner or for sweets
yeah.
or whatever it is. And I just think it's always blowing me away how I thought cookbooks may be obsolete, and I have been proven that they are not.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad that it's one of your favorite cookbooks, but you sounds like you thought of another one. What was your other cookbook?
It is a local church cookbook
Yeah?
with like my aunts and my all my family friends and different things in it, and has their names next to the recipes, and it's the one that I trust over and over again.
Yep,
So
yep.
I think that's the one I'd have to go for
Yeah, and, maybe with the one that you were reaching for on the shelf
before mine.
before this one. Yeah,
Mhm. Yep.
yeah. I not only do I pull my cookbook down and use it, the first one I wrote, but I have, like, little clips of things that, like, we've been on this pizza making kick and different styles of pizza and different recipes for dough, and I'll scratch down, like, the weights and the measurements, and I just file them in the front of my cookbook. So, my cookbook is also like a little storage
Yeah.
facility for recipes that, like, I probably need to do something with them, but right now I know they're safe inside my cookbook up on the shelf. And, several people's cookbooks who have come on the show, I mentioned this in a earlier, episode. Tessa Kairos wrote a book called Now and Then think it was her 11th cookbook, and she's got a cornbread, like thin flatbread cracker in there that I've been making all the time. So I love discovering new people, new cookbooks, and you're no exception. It's been such a joy to talk to you, and I'd love for you to share how people can connect with you online.
Yeah, so I have my main blog. It's julieseatsandtreats.com. And then you can find me on Facebook. My Instagram user handle is Julie's Eats and Treats. You can find me on Pinterest and TikTok too.
Okay. What's this? Let's talk about this is like a little final thing. What's the story with Pinterest these days? How's it going, and what is it driving to your blog?
Yeah, so luckily it still is working for
That's
me.
good. That's good.
But I have been on there forever and I have so many pins and recipes on there that
Right. Are you still actively having to put things out there?
yes,
Yes.
I do still actively use it.
Yeah. And then how's TikTok?
TikTok, I don't know about TikTok, how I feel about it.
Because I would think as a business owner, you really are measuring whether this is adding any benefit to your business, right?
Right. So I just reuse my reels from Instagram and put them on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I haven't had any really blow up, I'd say. I have minimal followers on TikTok. I've always been an advocate of know what works for you and pour your time in there. And there's only so many things you can do in a day.
Right.
And unfortunately, TikTok has not been able to fit into my time allotment yet.
Right.
So
Well, that's a good way to think about it. And when you think about that then, and I've got this allotment for this time and pouring it in is worth it, what is the number one way that's worth it for you?
just new content. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like listening to what people want and watching what they're going to on my website, because that's where I want to focus my development on, is more recipes like that. Not what I want to make necessarily, but what people want.
Yeah. I think as a business owner, that is something that is a shift. You started this probably as a self-interest, personal way to share things, but then to grow it, listening to what they want and reflecting that back to them is the way that you probably have continued to grow and evolve.
Yeah. That's what makes it successful, is when you listen to essentially your customers and what they want.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, I can't thank you enough. Wish you all the best with your book promotions and driving around the state and the Midwest to promote your book, Julie's Eats and Treats Cookbook, Easy Family-Friendly Recipes from a Midwestern Mom. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes. Thanks for having me. I had so much fun.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes at www.cookbooklove.co. And if you are interested in writing a cookbook of your own, please check out the free cookbook writing masterclass called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook. It is designed specifically for food or nutrition experts, and you can check that out at www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free. So that's it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.